I'm excited for today's episode because, and I feel like I always say this, but every time it's for a specific reason. Today's is especially important for me because I was just saying offline that, Enrique, who's with us today, is somebody that I've been looking at and following and being inspired by for a very long time. I mean, this is probably a decade ago that I knew of him and his work and everything else. So it's been, more of an honor than anything else for me to get to talk to him, get to connect with him, and also now to have him share that inspiration with our audience and everybody else. So first things first, Enrique, thank you so much for being here.
Oh yeah, I appreciate that. Thank you for messaging me. And I still get nervous to get on these podcasts and things to share, which I share on stages all over the world. But I think I just get excited to share some more love and inspiration with people. So thank you for getting me on today.
Yeah, well, it's amazing the humility that you have, and to mention that you still get nervous for, a podcast or an interview, even though you've spoken on stages in front of thousands of people. So that's awesome that you still have that. And I think it's good, proof for everybody else who's getting nervous in their day to day or, to pursue business or anything else. So it's amazing to see somebody like yourself say that. For anybody who doesn't know who you are, hasn't come across your social media, hasn't, been impacted by you yet in a positive way, tell us a bit more about yourself, what you do. We'll go from there.
Yeah, so my name's Enrique Carrillo. I'm originally from Las Cruces, New Mexico, and some people think of it as Mexico. It's not Mexico. It's like the new part of New Mexico, like United States. So it's in the United States. So sometimes people say like, "Oh, you speak good English." I am from the United States, so just wanted to share that with you guys. And I live in Houston, Texas right now. I've been doing my business for the past 15 years. And of course, started off with humble beginnings. Parents are school teachers. We had, just what we needed in life, never anything more, no vacations, nothing like that in life. And, got offered a business opportunity. And it was probably the lowest time of my life. I was 22 years old. I had 3 DWIs, 2 minor possessions, had to get my stomach pumped twice from overdosing, drinking on drugs. Life was just a low point for me. And my mom called me into her kitchen one day, and she's like, "Enrique, where'd I go wrong?" And my parents, they raised me right. Like a lot of you guys out there, your parents, they do the best they can with you. And, sometimes we just go wayward, but I always feel like without a purpose, we perish. And that's where my life was going to. And, thank God I got offered, to get healthy first. One of my friends was like, "Hey, come check this stuff out. You need some energy." And I'm like, okay, because I'd be drinking those Red Bulls and doing crazy things to have some energy all the time. And, so once I got introduced to, healthy, active lifestyle living, started doing that, lost some weight, felt good, helped my mom. And when my mom started feeling good, like when women do not feel good, guys, the whole world does not feel good. Let me tell you that, right? And especially if it's your mom. And, when she was gaining weight, she wasn't feeling too good. I said, let me see if this stuff will help my mom. Let me get her going. And literally the first day I got her going on a program, she looked at me and she said, "Wow, you don't know how bad you feel until you start feeling good." And something right there just spoke to me. Like, what if everybody could feel this good? About a month later, my coach offered me an opportunity to make some money. And then, I don't know, like the rest is history from there, where we can probably ask some questions on how I started my business and things like that. But that was just the humble beginnings of how I started my business, kind of where I came from. I played sports my whole life, football, basketball, baseball, and not being a part of a community as well. I think that's where I perished too, so I think all those played a role in me getting started how I did. So.
Yeah, I'll for sure get into all the business questions in a second, and I want to talk about all of that because I know how much value you can bring to all the entrepreneurs, business owners watching this and wanting to live the lifestyle that you've been able to create for yourself. But before I do that, you said something really interesting, that at a young age you were lost and you were without purpose, and all the challenges that you were facing, which, by the way, I wasn't even aware of. I knew parts of your story, but not all of that. So that was news to me as well. For anybody who's younger or, at any stage of their lives where they're facing some challenges and they find themselves in a really dark place and they don't really know how to get themselves even into a position to execute on their goals, what would you say to them, or how can they take that first step to getting out of that dark place?
Yeah, I think a lot of times we're afraid to ask for help. A lot of times we're afraid to express our emotions. And growing up in like a culture like I did, my dad was always like, be tough and don't cry and don't whatever, don't show your emotions. And like, I'm a baby. Like, I love to share my emotions, and literally like your life will be changed by the people that you meet and the books that you read. And, from there, it's like when I met some people in my life that I was able to express my feelings to and my thoughts and things like that. One of the ladies that I share with you guys, her name is Beatrice, and she passed away a couple years ago, but she was one of the ladies that was always like, hey, how are you? How's your heart? How's it going? How's your mentality? And literally, like, I was able to open up with her for certain things. And a lot of times I think children are afraid to open up, or even like the older adults who are afraid to open up to people for feeling that we're vulnerable, or that they're going to use it against us, and that was me. Like, I just didn't want to share with anybody what I was going through. And then also lots of prayer, you know what I mean? I think I turned to a lot of prayer back then too, because you get into such a dark place in your life sometimes, and you're just like, oh, who can help me out? And, I just turned to prayer, and, just, helping me out, and also turning your life around in certain things. Like, I found health and nutrition, which I've always been addicted to, like working out and doing things like that. But I found something that I loved. Like, I can get back and be healthy again. My body, like, I was 217 pounds before I started doing this. I dropped 42 pounds, and I'm just like, dang, it looks good. My body looks good. I just got addicted to the feel good of that. So I think from there, just helping people there, like, don't be afraid to open up and talk to people, even if it's like somebody that you don't know, that you kind of maybe confide in, that you can talk to and just kind of share a little something. But, we're all going to go through some certain pains or things in our life. And, when you can find somebody to talk to, or, just share it with, it's great to get it out there.
Yeah, that's great advice. I think the two pieces that you shared are really practical. One is reaching up and asking for help. And, somebody has your answer out there. There's a classic saying of, it's not always what, sometimes it's who, where you can get your answers and find your next steps. So I think that's a really important piece. Mentorship has been a part of my life ever since I can remember, right? I remember when I was, 16, when I got introduced to Jim Rohn, obviously somebody you're very familiar with as well, which I'd love to actually talk about. I just realized I've never really had a podcast or had a deep conversation with somebody who also loves Jim Rohn as much as I do, or you're definitely the first on this podcast for sure. But I always talk about him. You've probably seen it in my videos or anywhere else. I'm always dropping the quotes here and there, because he's the first real mentor figure that had a lasting impact on me, where it completely changed the trajectory of my life. I mean, when he was saying, self-education will make you a fortune, but formal education will make you a living, but self-education will make you a fortune, that completely directed my path when I was 16, 17 years old. I never would have gone into sales and gone into all these different industries and partnerships and what I do today if it wasn't for that one piece of advice, right? And so much more. So I remember waking up at 16, 17, taking notes. I would make egg whites and a bowl of oatmeal and have my shake there and watch Jim Rohn for about an hour or so. And again, that stayed with me. So reaching up for help, getting information from the right sources, I think that's incredible. And then you also said reading books. So quick little side tangent. What was the last book you read that had a lasting impact on you?
The last book I read, so I love reading like books over and over again. You know what I mean? The last book I read, I love reading it before I go to like events or things like that. But it's called Outwitting the Devil. And that book is phenomenal. Like, I read it every year, and I'm about to go speak in Belgium this next week. And, it's just something like, you get that other self, like you get like that fear. Like, you get rid of fear in your life, and there's certain types of things, like you find your other self to push you forward. You're not thinking like everybody else. Like, you want to be in the top 2% of, thinking for yourself and not fall into, what other people think you should do, how you should think, how you should live, how you should do that. And that book literally brings out so much in me, so I can share with people of like, hey, we're entrepreneurs. Hey, we're different than other people. Hey, you have your own mind. Hey, you're creative. Hey, use your special abilities. Like, my special ability, when I read that book, I'm like, I'm love. Like, that's who I am. I am love. Like, that's my special power. That's like what I do. And sometimes I think of my special power being like weak, or, he's soft, or, or like, people step on me sometimes for being so kind. But I'm like, no, like, that's who I am, and that's who I'm going to live my life, and that's how I'm always going to be. And that's my superpower. And sometimes, do I get hurt? Do I get, stepped on or whatever? But I kind of just always remember this quote my mom said to me: do things out of the kindness of your heart without expecting anything in return. And when I always keep that up in the forefront of everything, I'm kind of like, cool, like let this be my special power of creativity and loving on people as much as possible.
That's amazing. Yeah, I mean, your superpower, quote unquote, could be a strength or could also be seen as a weakness. It's all about your perspective on things and how you choose to utilize it. I want to share a quick little story with you about that book, Outwitting the Devil. I really don't want this to be about me or talking about myself. I have so much to talk to you about, so many questions I got for you. But I think this is pretty cool because I read that book for the first time a while ago. This is when I was first moved out on my own. I moved out at 17 years old, so I was living on my own at the time, this little basement studio. And I was listening to the audiobook. And you know how in the audiobook, the devil has a voice? It's like a deeper voice. So this was a period of my life where I was trying to essentially, you could say, brainwash myself in a positive direction. So I was going to bed listening to audiobooks every night. I had this little chapter where I did this, right? And then I stopped because I realized I want to get good sleep. But there was a chapter where I did this. So I listened to that book. And I remember I was having nightmares about this devil speaking to me and whatnot. And I woke up pretty scared, and I was still hearing the devil talking. And that was probably one of the scariest moments of my life. And then I looked to my right and realized the audiobook was playing. So after that, I think that's probably when I stopped listening while I'm sleeping. But you brought up that book, and I just had to share that story. But that's awesome. And I love that you read books over and over again. That's something I do all the time. Another thing you mentioned that I just want to ask a follow-up question on is faith. You said the role of faith in getting you out of that dark place. And I feel like for me, as I've gotten older, spirituality has become more and more of an important thing for me. It really wasn't when I was young, and I was extremely arrogant towards it. I was a hardcore atheist, and I was out to war against all these ideologies. And as I got older, now, you know, I quite literally have a box of spiritual books that I'm going through, and I'm just pulling all these lessons and whatnot. So what has that role been for you in terms of spirituality, in terms of faith? How's that served you?
I think not being afraid to speak out too, you know, because a lot of times, like when you're alone and it's like, who else you're going to pray to or who else you're going to go to? Like, I figured this is it, like, you know, and, you know, I've been battling cancer right now and I'm done with all my things. And literally, like, I sat there some nights or some days, I'm like, who else do I pray for? Who else do I go to? Like, you know, I sit there and I'm just like praying to God, like, please help me out. Like, you know, heal me, be there for me. And sometimes there's people that you can't even talk to like that. And when you have that type of faith and you have that type of belief, and, you know, you can literally just heal yourself through the inside out of having that type of belief of somebody out there to talk to, somebody out there to pray to. And, you know, that's with me, like, you know, we have different spiritual beliefs, but I think if you keep this, like I always talk about in my business, is spiritual life, you know, family life, and then it's the herbal life with our business, you know, and that's what I was always, you know, put to my team, because a lot of times when our spiritual life goes, you know, so does our family life, and then so does our business. So I always keep you know, faith, you know, number one out of everything. So
that's awesome. Obviously, it's had a very clear role in your success and everything that you do. And like you said, in your recovery and the later challenges that you've been facing. So I'm glad to hear that as well. And glad to see you and your spirit going through this chapter and overcoming anything that comes your way. I mean, is there anything you want to share on that, or any lessons you've drawn from this more recent challenge and how you've been able to handle it?
Yeah, so I don't know. It's been kind of like a different journey in my life right now. You know what I mean? I'm learning a lot of things about myself, and also like family, and like family is going to be number one, guys. No matter as much as like I fought with, you know, my family, my sister, my mom here and there. We always make up all the time, but like they're literally the ones that are calling me. How are you doing? How's it going? And I don't know, it gets me a little emotional because like the day that my mom found out, I got really mad at her because she like was crying, and she was just like, I don't know, she was just hurt, and she just wanted to scream out. And I was like, stop, like, please stop. And I figured out, like, I probably would have cried too. I probably would have been in that moment too. And, you know, I was just so like, oh, in my head that I didn't want to cry myself or have my emotions. And, you know, I told her sorry later, but I just share that, like, you know, people, family members and stuff are going to have their own emotions on when you go through things. Let people go through things the way they go through things. And, when I'm going through this, like, I literally had to learn how to be still, because I'm always on the go. I'm always working. I'm always, talking to people. I'm always working out. I'm always that. Like, I literally had to learn to listen to my body. I had to learn how to, even pray and meditate even harder. I had to learn there's certain disciplines, because literally, like, when I decided to go through the treatments, I was like, okay, cool, I'm going to do the treatments. There's so many things I had to cut out of my life that I was like, this is me. Like, I married myself to these certain things of, like, working out and working hard and doing this and like, sometimes you get so married to certain things, and that identifies you. And I was like, no, like, I need to change my ways and my things when I go through these treatments. And I still try to work out sometimes like crazy, and I'm like, nope, my body's not going to do that, And literally the third day in, I was my dad called me, and I was like, Dad, I do not want to do this anymore. Like, I am like, this is awful, this pain. Like, I didn't even think that I was going to go through this much pain. And he says, okay. He said, what would you tell me if I was going through this too? Get your ass going and fight this thing, because I love you, and I'm going to I want to be with you for the rest of, like, your life. He's like, well, I'm going to tell you that too. He said, keep on fighting. He said, it's going to be day by day, and I want you to know that I love you. And this is going to be a fight every single day to live. He said, but I don't want to watch you die before me. My dad said that, and I was just like, so it's those type of things in those moments that you have, and, like, having something to fight for, so every single day, like, waking up and having that routine of, eating this and taking these baths and doing this, whatever, and doing the chemo and doing the radiation. There's days that you don't want to do it. Like, it also taught me the discipline that I have and I had inside of my business as well. So I think for a strong mindset that I had in my business, I think for the people that I've met, the books that I've read, to have that discipline that I had to be able to get better while I was going through my treatments, because sometimes they said that people quit during their treatments. People say that they don't feel good. People say whatever, like, that's their story. It wasn't my story, right? And people are like, oh, somebody died during this cancer. It's the same as yours. And somebody that has said, well, that's their story. I'm writing my own story. I'm keeping the pen in my hand. So watch me get better. Watch me do this. I'm not the average. They said usually with, people right now, like, I was working out all the way to the last, days of my treatments. Like, even after my treatments, I'm still back in the gym. I'm still doing my stuff. I'm still eating healthy. Like, that's just who I am. And the doctor's amazed on, like, how good I'm doing. She was like, how are you working out? How are you doing this? How are you doing that? Like, like, don't let other stories define your story. And that's what I'm learning right now too. Like, some people might not have made it in this business or that business or whatever it is. Like, that was their story. Don't let their story define you. So with me, I'm like, okay, those people might have died. Those people might have got super sick. Those people might have whatever. But watch me. I'm different than those people. I'm going to keep the pen in my hand. I'm going to stay disciplined in this area. I'm going to eat the right things. I'm going to exercise. I'm going to have faith. I'm going to meditate. I'm going to do those things to help me stay alive. And through that, I literally feel like that's helped me. But relating to the business wise, that's the discipline you have in your business, right? That's the discipline that you have in your everyday life. That's the discipline that you have when you walk through faith, when you walk through those different type of things where you don't think you can make it. And it's like, how is this getting me better taking a bath? How is this getting me better, doing this? But it's also like that in your business. Like, when I'm out every day, passing out invites and doing my social media, doing those things, like, how is this building business? And later on, like, the fruits of your labor is going to show up 90 days from now, maybe show up a year from now. So with me, like, I work on getting, like, I'm not going to know my results until December, but I'm going to stay active. I'm going to stay eating right. I'm going to stay doing my things. And 90 days, the fruit of my labor of what I worked on for these past whatever months that I'm going through, bam, going to come December, I'm going to be healed and I'm going to be good to go. Right. So I just share that, like, in business, what I learned through this, and it also applies to my business there with self-discipline and faith and lots of love.
Yeah, thank you for sharing all of that. And I appreciate you opening up to the degree that you do as well. I think that's what gives you that superpower of being so lovable, like you said earlier. I think part of that is because you're so in tune with your emotions and you're open and willing to share. And I think that really draws people in, at least from my experience, knowing you from afar for so long. I think that's what has drawn me into your message, is that you're so in tune with your emotions and open to share. If you don't mind me asking, are you were you raised in a female dominant family? You said you have a sister, right?
I have two sisters.
Two
Yeah.
sisters. Okay, got it. The reason I ask is because same here. I have two sisters as well, one older, one younger, and I was raised by my grandmother, mom, and older sister. And I feel like that has really put me in tune with my emotions and has really raised my social awareness, social acuity, emotional intelligence, and I see a lot of that in you as well. That's why I just asked. That's my personal theory. There's no science behind it. I haven't done any research, but I think growing up around females just gives you a different level of awareness on all levels.
Yeah.
I think this whole experience, from the sounds of it, has really taught you so many lessons and has almost put an armor around you of more strength, has almost made you a stronger and better person that you were. It's almost like everything you knew, all the personal development you did in the past leading up to this point was theory. And now here it is in real application. Here it is really getting you through a tough, challenging situation. Here it is really proving itself out. So it's amazing to see, and it's more of a testament for somebody like myself to continue the self-development, continue reading, continue learning, continue working on myself. And you brought up one of my favorite words, discipline. And I love that you drew the parallel to business as well. But can I just ask you about discipline? Have you always been a very routine and regimented person and imposed that discipline on your own life?
Yeah, I would say like, cause like I said, my dad was a football coach back in the day, so, and my parents were school teachers. So they literally had like they had their routine down, like, okay, we're going to wake up at this time, we're out of the door at this time, we're going to be at school at this time. And then my dad is a school teacher. Like he had his lessons planned out. Then we have lunch at this time. Like literally that's just how our life has always been, very regimented, always active, always going. So, with that, it's like we had to have the discipline, and then I remember one time, yeah, this kind of brings up this story. I think I was like 8 or 9 years old and I was playing basketball and I was sitting on the bench and I was like complaining I was sitting on the bench. And then, my dad, I cried after one of the games because I only got to play like maybe 2 to 3 minutes. And then he was like, "Why are you crying for?" And then I was like, "I'm tired of sitting on the bench." And then he was like, "Well, you get home and you sit on your butt." He said, "You don't do anything." He said, "You're watching TV. Like if you really want to start, you really want to play, go out there and practice after your games, go practice this, go do this." And I'm just like, okay, literally at the end of the season, I was starting because I was getting so good. And then in baseball too, he's like, "All right." So, and then baseball, basketball, and then football. So he's baseball, go throw 100 grounders, off the wall, go practice, right? Go do 100 flies, and then for basketball, he wouldn't let me go to bed during my season until I shot 100 free throws. You know what I mean?
That's awesome.
So it's those type of disciplines that were instilled in me as a young age that I lost them when I went to college because of course I'd go to class, but then I'd go like, I think my discipline was like, okay, let me see if I can go drink and have parties and whatever. Like, I don't even know, but like, it was just different when I was in college. And then once I grew into my business, I'm like, oh, I've had this discipline before from my dad. Like, let me put this into how to grow my business and how to work with people and how to grow a team and, how to be a leader. So all of that fit into that.
Sure. And at this point in your life, with all the experience you have and obviously the levels of success that you've achieved, what is the role of discipline? I mean, this is more of a selfish question because I'm just always really fascinated by people's psychology, people's routines, people's habits. It's something that I love to dig into. And that's one thing that I really do on this podcast as well. I love reading biographies, watching documentaries, things of that nature. So I really love to do that in real time if I'm talking to somebody. So at this stage in your life, is there a specific, morning routine? Is there a specific time you sleep and wake up? Is there still that rigid structure in your day to day?
As like my leadership's grown or like my hard work has like paid off in this sense where like literally there's like when I was really in the grind of like building this like residual income, building the foundation of my business, I would get literally 4 to 5 hours of sleep a night, and it was so regimented where like I woke up at, like Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays, I would wake up at 5:30. On Tuesdays and Thursdays, I wake up at 4:30. On Saturdays and Sundays, I wake up at 6 o'clock. I slept in a little bit, right? And it didn't happen right away. Like those of you guys are like, "Oh, how did that happen?" Guys, I love to sleep in. I loved my sleep. I loved those things. It was like you can't run a marathon in one day, which I've done that before. Don't ever do that again. But I share that with you. Like, you have to go bit by bit, right? So say if you're used to waking up at 7, like wake up at 6:45 and then go 6:30. Like that's something that I had to do. But that helped me get up earlier because there was times where I was showing up to work or showing up to my business, and it was like I'd wake up at 6:50, go use the restroom, go brush my teeth, put on some freaking clothes, and head out the door. At that time, my cup is not, it's empty, right? And when I would show up, people would have to pour into me. Oh, you look tired. Oh, da da da. Oh, da da da. Hope you get better. Hope whatever. I'm like, I'm not sick. I'm just, I'm just sleepy. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And people literally had to start filling me up. And I'm like, no, let me start working on myself in the morning. Right? Let me get my workout in. Let me read. Let me do my spiritual work. Let me do my meditation. Let me get my shakes. Let me get my tea. Let me fill myself up for those first 2 hours out of the day. And then when you fill your cup up and you're overflowing, you overflow into other people. And that was me. Like, let me have my self-care. I learned this from my mom. Right. So I look back and I'm like, where did I get this from? Like, you know, people tell me to do this all the time, but I look back, my mom would wake up at 4:30, 5 o'clock every single day. And I would remember, like, sometimes I'd wake up because the TV was loud, but she was watching, Richard Simmons and like those, you know, remember Richard Simmons back in the day? And she
I
was
love
doing,
that she had the TV on loud too.
yeah, doing her
Yeah.
aerobics and working out and whatever. And then she would sit down and do read the Bible. Then she would make
Wow.
sure her clothes are ready. She was make sure all her stuff was packed, like ready to go. And I'm like, that was where I learned this from. My mom's like, if you can't fill your cup up, how are you going to fill other people's cup up? So I'm like, that's where I got it from, you know. And then once that regiment came, and once my cup was filled up in the mornings, then when I would show up, be like, hey, I'm here, you know, let's go. And nothing phases you because you're listening to a podcast, you're listening, you're reading, you're meditating, you're, you know, having a spiritual, you know, gratitude in the morning, like all those different things. And then once you show up, you're ready to show up for other people, not for yourself.
Mm-hmm. So I'm sure you're aware there are two schools of thought in this area here. One school of thought is wake up early, 4 or 5 a.m., whatever that is, and just get right to work. Sit on your laptop and just pump out 3 hours of deep work. Another school of thought is wake up early and do your, you know, gratitude journal, set your goals, get a workout in, do your morning routine, whatever that is, spiritual, being in touch with yourself. It sounds to me like you're in the second camp, correct? Wake up and take care of yourself first, fill up your cup, and then you can pour into others.
Right.
Fair to assume?
Yeah. And like I said, everybody's different. I have some people that wake up at like, some people on my team wake up at like 8 or 9 o'clock and they still do awesome with their work and they do it. I'm like, okay, cool. But I feel everybody's different. You know, I can tell people my routine. I can tell people how I did it. I can tell people how successful I am. Like, I'm not the smartest person out there in the world. I had to work harder than other people. You know, I have dyslexia, so I can't really read as well. I have to read something over and over and over to actually get it, you know. And some people, they work smarter as well. Like, I've learned to work smarter, not as hard, but also there's time in your business where you have to work super hard to build up that momentum in your business. So I was willing to, I don't like the word sacrifice. I don't like that word at all. I like the word of decision making. I decided to give up some sleep to be able to work on myself and get myself better. And then therefore I had more time in the day. Like, I have this, I'll just share it with you. I have this thing, like how to get more time, like how to get 90 more days out of your year, right? 90 more days out of a year. And I tell people, like, most people sleep 8 hours a day. I say, what if, you know, you gave up 2 hours out of the day, right? And you sleep 6 hours. What would that do for you? So 2 times, you know, 7 is what I forgot. There's like some math in it, right?
Yeah, right, right.
Yeah. So, but then if you did 2 hours a day, that would literally give you 28 days. If I've done the math before, that'd give you 28 extra days, right? But which is like hour wise, which is tons of hours that would give you. So 28 days would give you 1 February, right? 1 extra February. A lot of people like taking off 2 days out of the week, Saturdays and Sundays. And I get that. But as an entrepreneur, guys, I was always so disciplined of working 7 days a week because an object at rest stays at rest until acted on an outside force. We as entrepreneurs are that force. So I'm like, okay, well, if I'm not pushing on a Saturday and Sunday, I got to go back on Monday and I got to push that ball up the freaking hill again. And then it's starting to roll and starting to go down, and then take off Friday. Oh, it's coming back down. Right. So my thing was like, if I even work Saturdays and Sundays, like people take off the Saturdays and Sundays. I'm like, what if I didn't take off Saturdays and Sundays? And what if I just started pouring in for it doesn't have to be for that long, guys. It doesn't have to be for the rest of your life. My thing was I can shorten my time of making it to this level of how much money I wanted to make, the residual income, and I've shortened my time. So let me work Saturdays and Sundays for so and so many years. And literally for 1 year, if you were to like add that up, so it's actually eight more days out of the week, right? Out of the month. So that 8 more days gives you like a full week that you're working, right? And then you do that times, 12 weeks in the whole entire year. That gives you like 3 extra months that you're working your business. Isn't that crazy?
Right. Yeah, it's insane. And, it's funny. You're doing all the math and talking about all this here. And to some people watching this, to the average person, it might sound crazy. But I can promise you, I'm telling you this with full honesty. I've sat down and did this exact math so many times. I can't even tell you. I've done all kinds of crazy math. If I wake up at 4 a.m., how much more hours can I get in the month? And how much more can I do here? Because, I just learned early in my sales career when I was, very young and about 19 or so, my first real career sales job that I wanted to get ahead of everybody. I realized, I could skill up. I could be better. I could be a, hardcore closer. I could, be the best that I am skill-wise. But why not just take the first advantage that I can, which is put in more hours, put in more time, come in earlier than everybody, leave later than everybody. Like you said, I was working 7 days a week. I would come in on my 2 off days where the other sales guys would try to capitalize and they would all get mad at me. And I got into many fights, got into many confrontations when I was young. I was hot-headed. It is what it is. And, nowadays, I would be more diplomatic and be a little more, kinder. But at that time, to me, it was competition. It was, I'm here to take your head off. You're here to take my head off. We're competing for the same sales. I'm going to take every advantage that I can. And yes, I'm going to win at the end of the day. And I did. I got the results. And the pillar, the foundation was the hard work. And then above that, you study, you learn, you skill up, you read, everything else. So I love that you say this. And this whole conversation, I'm so glad we did this because it's so inspiring for me. It's just it's reaffirming what I already believe, right? Because a lot of times, friends, family, people close to you, people who may think differently might tell you, no, sleep more, get some rest, you work too hard, things of that nature. At this point, I feel I've become immune to that, but it still does have an impact on you, right? Somebody could plant a little seed in your mind. That seed grows over time, right? So let me ask you this then, actually, on this topic. How important is it to protect yourself against negativity, doubt, somebody who wants to plant these seeds in your head, that you might think, I'm aware, like Jim Rohn used to say, stand guard at the door of your mind. You might be thinking that consciously, but that seed still gets planted. How do you go about protecting yourself against that? And what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, well, we talked about Outwitting the Devil, right? And you look at that book and you think about how people have thought for you for your whole entire life. Your parents, when you were younger, right? They thought for you and like, okay, do this and yes and no, whatever. Then you go to school, like elementary school, middle school, high school. Your teachers are thinking for you. Then you get into a job. The job is saying, wear this, do this, blah, 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 right? And continuously over and over. There was a moment in my business where my dad, like, he was like not having it. Like I got given my first check in the business. I said, hey, Dad, check this out. And before that, I decided to put school on hold forever. And he was super pissed because he's an educator, right? He has his bachelor's, he has his master's, so does my mom. And their thing was like, go to school, get your education, do all those things. And then as like I always say, your life will be changed by the people that you meet and the books that you read. My coaches, literally, they instilled a lot of Mark Hughes in us, which was our founder in our business. This guy had a ninth grade education. And I could think about that. Like, if this guy could do it at a ninth grade education, like I can do this too. Jim Rohn, the first book I ever read, for things to change, you got to change. For things to get better, you got to get better. He has all these different philosophies, and literally thinking about this, like I was at the point where, my dad, like I was just I wanted to stop thinking, like my dad to stop thinking for me. Like I give him the check and I said, Dad, look at this. And I was 9 months into my business. I finally got my first check. It was $66.41. And he was like, get that shit out of here. Go back to school, get your education. And like a lot of cuss words in between there. And I looked at him and I said, you know what? I have a vision. And our founder's name is Mark Hughes. I have a vision like Mark Hughes. And his vision, guys, was to put a Formula One canister, which is our healthy meal replacements, in every single kitchen table in the world. So taking myself out of the equation and following the mission, guys, to help out people, that's what I was a part of. I wasn't a part of like my dad. And you need to know this too, like all of you guys on here, like your parents' dreams are their dreams that they let go of themselves. Like they let their own dreams go because they had to maybe raise you, or they had to go do something like that. Where my dad, he talked about, dang, I could have been this, or dang, could have been this, and my mom, I could have been this. And, it kind of breaks my heart because it's like, dang, your parents stop their goals and their dreams sometimes because of you, right? And those of you guys out here that have stopped your goals and your dreams because of your kids, that's an excuse as well. And I share that with you guys because I tell my mom, like, your dreams and goals are not dead. Like, they're alive. Like, we still can do things. But my dad was sharing those things with me because he didn't want to see me hurt. Right. And your parents share these things with you, and people see things because they heard, like, just like I brought up my cancer, right? This person died and this person this and this person. Like, guys, I'm writing my own story, right? You're writing your own story. Keep the dang pen in your hand, however you feel in your heart to do certain things. And literally when I said that, like, I wanted to also prove my dad wrong. Like, watch me, and then my check started rising. $100 and then $200 and then $400 and then $1,000 and then $2,000 and $5,000 just with the hard work they put in. And then when I brought him that $10,000 check, and he looked at it and he said, "You little shit, I was so damn proud of you." And that moment right there, guys, was like, thank you me for thinking for myself. But when my dad said, "I'm so damn proud of you," like, that was like, oh, my dad's proud of me. Like, kind of done. Like, this is great. But another moment hit me, and this kind of I guess would go with everything as well, where you find that other, like, motivation inside yourself, like your why and your motivation, and everything's going to change with certain conversations and things that happen to your life and the pivotal moments. And there was that moment where my dad said that, where I was like, I'm good to go. I'm 24 years old. I'm making this money. This is awesome. But my mom was sitting behind my dad, and my mom looked at the check, and then she looked at me and she said, "I'm sorry we couldn't provide this type of lifestyle for you." And I was just like, and I was just got like a lump in my throat, and I looked at her. I said, "You know what, Mom, I promise you one of these days I'm going to retire you." I said, "I have the opportunity to make as much money as I freaking want and work as hard as I want and talk to as many people as I want and help out as many people, in this community as I can. So I'm going to retire you. I know exactly how much money I need to make." And literally, guys, I went out there. I don't remember sleeping for 6 months, roll up to my mom's office. And this was, 2011. So, 11 years ago or so, 12, I don't even know my math right now, but it was quite a few years ago. I rolled to her office and I said, "Mom, check this out." And it was quite a bit of money. I said, "Look at that." And she was like, "Oh my gosh." And I was like, "Yeah." I said, "Grab yourself. Let's get out of here. You're done working for the rest of your life." And that moment, a look of freedom on her face, guys, was amazing. So all the hard work and everything that I put into all that, guys, was totally worth it to see the happiness of my mom. So
you just gave me goosebumps, and you just reminded me of how much of an imprint hearing some of these stories in the past had on me when I was younger, and why it's driven me to the point that it's driven me, to today. You brought up Mark Hughes, and I think it's important to just pay some tribute really quickly because he also had a huge impact on me as well. Not that I ever met him or had the opportunity to, but just hearing stories, third-hand story. And that's when you've had a powerful impact, when people can hear second-hand, third-hand stories and still be inspired, and it still has an impact on their lives, right? It's just insane to think about that. And I would hope that at a certain point, I can do that as well for people. You're already doing that for people. I hope this conversation does that for people. I think that's at the end of the day what it's really about. But one of the stories that I know, of course, really well, but for anybody who doesn't, was when Jim Rohn and Mark Hughes were talking, and Jim Rohn actually told him, you can correct me if I'm wrong in the details, but I remember the main point. Jim Rohn told Mark Hughes that, Mark, I don't really see the vision. I don't see what you see. And Mark Hughes said, "Borrow my eyes." And that type of vision and that strength and conviction in your vision just really resonated with me. And I've never forgot that. That story has stayed with me ever since I was a kid. And that level of conviction and faith in yourself and in your vision and mission just showed me, what's really required to reach those levels of success. Any thoughts on that story, by the way, or any pieces that I missed?
Yeah. There's like this quote that I saw and I read a while back, and I just want to share with you guys because this totally reminded me of Mark Hughes, but it also reminded me of like this conversation we're having right now, talking about like leadership and talking about like, let me see here. Oh yeah, so this is awesome. So it takes leaders with vision to help people with dreams. You know, like leaders
Wow.
with vision to help people with dreams. And those of you out here that are entrepreneurs, like have that vision, right? And how many people can fit into that, because so many people have these dreams, and that's where Mark Hughes had for us. Like he had this big vision. We're going to go customer by customer. We're going to go neighbor by neighbor. We're going to go city by city. We're going to go state by state. We're going to go country by country. We're going to go around the world. And it was like, like that's vision. But it's for people like me that had a dream. Right. And then now my vision's so big that I wanted, I retired my mom, retired my dad, paid off their house. Those are all dreams of mine. Right. And then I want to do more things for this world and have my own foundation, like all these things. And now I have a bigger vision for so many people. So I got to keep my vision this high so many dreamers can come in there and then start having a vision of their own to carry more dreamers with them. So huge.
I love that distinction between a vision and a dream. And I think for every entrepreneur and every leader, especially who has a team or who has people that look up to them, it's really important to have that. I learned this when I first became the manager of a small sales office, and then went on to build bigger sales teams. And I realized at this point, people are looking at me. They're watching my actions. They're observing. They're copying all my bad habits and some of my good habits. So I better make sure there's no bad habits and there's all kinds of good habits, right? And there needs to be accountability in place, self-accountability first and foremost, and then accountability for the team and everything as well. So I think it's so important to distinguish between vision and dream. That's awesome that you say that. So for everybody who's, I feel like at this point itching to just hear about the business side of things, let's get into that. So you started your business when you were really young, and it all seems in hindsight like it's been incredible and just an upward spiral, and you've achieved all these levels of success. And you said you're going to Belgium next week to speak, at a conference in front of all these people. And I know you've spoken at stages in front of tens of thousands of people. So all of that looks amazing, but let's talk about early stages of the business and maybe what were some lessons that you learned? Because I know just from being in business for myself, it's not all rosy, right? There's ups and downs, there's challenges. Maybe what were some of the early lessons that you had to learn in business?
Yeah, I'm trying to turn this off real quick.
No worries.
Can you hear the little thing? Hello, sorry. Okay, I think it should be good. Okay. The early lessons in business, like I feel like, developing a healthy habits in the morning. I think the morning routine is kind of really big for us. And then I forgot to share this. Like my mom would get our clothes and help us, share with us to get our clothes ready at night. So like, what does your night look like as well? So not only just the morning, but at nighttime, what's your nightly routine? And, she would always say, make sure you're praying, right? So sometimes as we get older, we let that go. And then like the gratitude and stuff, part of that. So I had to start embodying those type of things, and I think that helped me out a lot. But also, there was like, I don't know if it was a quote or something that I read back in the day, like, let them sleep while you work. Let them party while you work. Let them do this while you let them play while you work. Right. And that thing got to me. It's like, but it's not going to be like that forever. So while you're out partying, they're working. While you're out, you get to sleep in, they have to work. When you're on vacation, they're still going to have to work. So my biggest thing was like that whole thing motivated me like crazy to be able to like succeed. Right. So my thing was like, you're going to have to like give up some things. You have to make the decisions to be able to get better. And there was a moment in my business where I was literally riding my bike and I was literally like, what the heck am I doing here? My friends are, they're having like kids already. They're, living these awesome lifestyles. They're doing these freaking things. They're going on vacations. They have their degrees, and there's me. I'm at a point where I'm riding my freaking bike, and I'm like, what the heck? Like, how did my life get this way? And literally everything's pouring back into my business and paying the bills and doing those things. And my sister at that time was a single mom with 3 kids. I'm helping my sister put food on her table with her kids, and taking care of them and running them here and there and just doing whatever I could, taking care of them at my nutrition club. And it was literally going to be my last week that I was going to work my business in that nutrition club. And I was riding my bike and I was like, man, like this is my last time, but I had a weigh-in to do for some ladies that were in one of my challenges. And I remember walking in and I was like, okay, well, this is my last, couple of days in here, whatever. And then, I started weighing the ladies in. This one lady weighs in. Her name was Tracy, and she stepped on the scale. She'd been on the products and, with me and doing healthy, active lifestyle living for like 3 months already. And I read her numbers, and she's 46 years old at the time. And I'm like, Tracy, you're down 55 pounds. And like, she turns and hops off the scale, and she looks at me and she has like these tears in her eyes and she's crying. And I'm like, what's going on? And she was like, thank you so much for changing my life. And then she was like, yesterday was last night was the first night I was able to cross my legs over since I was 13 years old. She's like, I've been so overweight that I hadn't been able to do that. And I'm just like, I'm sitting there crying and she's crying. And then there's some other people weighing in and they're crying. And I'm like, this is just so special. And it became that moment where like, I didn't care how much money I had made. I was grateful I had my bike. I was grateful that I was able to, have my ramen noodles and my bologna sandwiches. I was grateful that I had my things. I was great. Like, I turned my attitude of gratitude. That's what it turned into. Like, I'm grateful for this. I'm grateful for this. So if you cannot be grateful for where you're at right now, you're not going to be grateful when you get the money. You're not going to be grateful when you get the fame. You're not going to be grateful when you have those things. So being grateful at that moment of things that I had. Okay, well, if I get more, that's good. I'm more grateful for this. I'm grateful for this. I'm grateful for that. And the gratitude overflowed like crazy. And more people started coming because they started seeing my energy was better. My attitude was better. And from that moment on, like, things just started flourishing like crazy. And that's like kind of like when the business took off right there. So it was super awesome.
That's amazing. Yeah. And I feel like, it's hard for somebody who's going through it in the moment to resonate with that and say, yeah, I'm grateful in the position that I'm in today. And, all the struggles and the bills I can't make and everything else. It's hard to see that when you're in the situation. But when you look back at it in hindsight, you're exactly right. If you can't be grateful on a day-by-day basis, you really can't be grateful later on either. It's the saying that I've loved for a long time, and I'm sure I heard it somewhere, all the books I've read and mentors I've had and whatnot, but always grateful, never satisfied. That sums me up to pretty much a T. That and another quote by Marcus Aurelius, who I'm sure the Roman emperor, wrote the book Meditations. He said, be strict with yourself and tolerant with others. Those two sayings basically sum me up in a nutshell. So I'm always grateful day by day. I'm just grateful. I think it's nature. I'm just very thankful. By nature, I've always been very optimistic and whatnot. But at the same time, I'm just never satisfied. I'm looking to always get better, always pursue my potential. It's not satisfied with material possessions. It's satisfied with my own growth, my own potential. And I think that's a never-ending journey. So I love that you said that as well. Now, in terms of you not caring about at that point how much money you made or being okay in your situation, it sounds to me like you were really driven by purpose. And I found that to be a common trait amongst people that reach success at the highest levels. At some point it becomes not just about the money, but it becomes more about the purpose of what they're doing. So I mean, maybe speak on that a bit. How do people go about finding that purpose or getting over that, just pursuing the money and actually tapping into the purpose and the work that they do?
Yeah, I feel like the purpose fell in my hands because I'm taking care like a servant to many. You know what I mean? I think you need to find something where you can serve the many. And it's like that whole quote with Jim Rohn, right? He says service to many leads to greatness. And literally when I read that and I saw that, I'm like, okay, how many people can I serve today? Right? How many people can I serve? And not only just with like, getting people healthy, helping them feel good, sending them off with a smile. Smiles are contagious. They're going to go make more people smile. So that was always my thing. Like, greet people with a hug, greet people with a smile, like all that's contagious. So that of love and, spreading smiles, like it brought more people to me. Right. But inside of that, it's like, I think a lot of people forget the kindness goes farther than any type of, hate or anything. So I just feel like that's where, that's where I stand.
So I want to ask you a question that's going to help a lot of small business owners, a lot of entrepreneurs who are watching this. If they have big goals, the big dreams that we talked about earlier, and they want to reach these big goals, they want to see themselves in a better position in the future, but they can't really see that clearly yet, or they can't break down the step by step to get there. If somebody's in that position and they really want to go for these big goals, these big ambitions, but maybe they're doubting themselves. Maybe they just don't see a clear path forward. What would be your best advice to people in that position?
I feel like a lot of times, like with me, I didn't really need gauges, but a lot of people do need gauges, and it's like you need I understood, like I was just ignorance on fire. I was just excited. Like there's no method of operation there's no better method of operation than excitement. And when you're excited about your business, excited about helping people, you're excited about those things, like that's going to go a lot farther than sometimes it's like, like here's a business plan and here's this, like you got to have a business plan. I do get that you do, but know that people came from jobs. And when you can have a plan for people and lay it out, like here's the onboarding site. This is what we do. Step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4. And I look back and my coaches actually had that for me. They're like, okay, step 1, we're going to do this. Step 2, let's go set up a shake party. Step 3, make sure you're doing this. Step 4, all those different things. And then I found my groove, which some stuff wasn't theirs. Like I was like, I don't like doing that, but let me post on social media. Let me go and do this. Let me go and help out the community. Let me go and do this. So like I found my groove with that as well. And then so when you're coming into business, especially being an entrepreneur and like what we do, you're going to have to find those different things that people can do, like with social media, some people like, finding people out the community every single day, working through fit camps, working through like, we have these nutrition clubs that we have. So depending on how it is, like you got to know your menu on how to get people scaled into this business. But everything starts with habits, reading the books, working your strong mind. And that's one thing that we like to impress upon people. Like you got to have that strong mindset every single day when you're out in the marketplace, because people are going to tell you no, right? And it's like some people that come and complain to me, they're like, oh, so-and-so told me no, and I turned down this, whatever. I said, your parents must have told you yes all the freaking time, because my parents told me no all the time. And, like you got to go build that tough skin out there, right? So like, oh, my parents did tell me no. I said, well, exactly, you're used to it. I said, go out there and find the yeses instead of the nos. So I think finding that, inside of my business, I literally had to find that onboarding site and the structure from that to be able to help out more people. Because like I said, a lot of us got in when I first started with like ignorance on fire. But once I developed a structure of like how people can gauge their business with certain things to do, like money making activities, working on yourself, what are team activities you're going to be doing? How can you meet new people every single day? So those are type of things that we scaled into our business. People can actually have check marks and do that with every single day. But for some people like me, I just went and did as much action as I could every single day without, as much gauges. But I developed that for my team because, like I said, everybody came from a lot of people came from 9-to-5 jobs. Like, what can you give them a job or an activity or a challenge every single day to scale their business?
That's valuable advice as always. And, I've taken up a lot of your time. We're already over time here. So I really appreciate you being here with us and sharing so much wisdom and all of your experiences over the years. But we wrap up all of our podcasts with this one question. And this is a question that really stemmed from me being younger and going to all these events, going to these business conferences and asking people like yourself, anybody that I could really get a hold of who was in a position that I wanted to be in, I would ask them this question. And I compiled all these answers over the years, and it really helped me in my path and in my journey. And I'm looking to give that back today by asking you this question, knowing everything you know today and the person that you are today and all the experiences that you have today. If you could go back to your younger self and give yourself just one piece of advice, what would that be?
What would that be? That's a tough one for me, because I always tell people like I wouldn't change a thing that I've done differently. But a word of advice was, I don't know, like don't assume things, right? I think don't like make assumptions, because it's like early in this business, I'm like, everybody wants to work as hard as me and everybody's going to do this and everybody wants to get healthy and everybody, and I would kind of let myself down sometimes if somebody didn't want to work as hard as me. If somebody, like you talked about standards earlier, my standards were like, boom, once I got started in this business, like everybody's going to love this like me and everybody's going to do this. And knowing to have like grace with people as well, because I did turn some people off because they didn't have the discipline I had. They didn't have the grit that I had. They didn't have this. Well, like, cool, I'm not going to work with you. Okay, cool, fine, leave. Like in my early stage of business, like having more grace with people and knowing that everybody's not like you, right? And that's where like once I started understanding like the different types of people out there, there's people that are softer and more like soft spoken and they just literally want to help and change the world. And there's people that are about money and they're like organization and they want that. Like, how can you help these different type of people and how can you communicate with them? Like people like me, I'm called a Ruby. Like I'm like about it. I'm competitive. I like to win, you know, all those things. And then how can you help somebody that's like, you know, they call them a sapphire? Like, how can you help somebody that's like about the fun and the party and looking, you know, the different parts? Like, how can you relate to all these different type of people and being okay with the shit decisions that people make as long as you keep your standards high? My dad would always say this, like, be so dang good, they can't point a finger at you, right? So like you're the way that you look, the way that you speak, the way that you act, like all those things, and you're getting better day by day. But I just share that with you, like that was been the pivotal thing for me where I probably wouldn't have turned so many people off in my business and like clients, you know what I mean? So that was kind of, I guess that don't assume things.
That's great advice, and I'm sure our audience is going to take that and run with it, whether they're younger and they're just starting their journeys, whether they're, you know, new business owners, new entrepreneurs. I'm sure that they're going to take that advice and apply it and hopefully get the same results that you've gotten. So Enrique, again, thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate your time, and I hope to have you back in the future and discuss a lot more topics that we could have dived into today, but for the sake of time, we kept it as tight as we possibly could.
Thank you for sharing that. But you know, find me on Instagram, you know, Enrique Carrillo _ right there. That's where you find me if you want to get healthy. I helped out thousands and thousands of people, and I believe that everybody needs a coach, you know, and I just don't coach you with like your weight loss. I don't just coach you through your weight gain. I don't just coach you those certain things, but it's mentally, physically, spiritually, in all those different ways. Because, you know, if you can't be strong up here, you know, you can't be strong right here. How are you going to go out there and, you know, be disciplined in those other areas? So we do a lot of work with just those certain things. So it's like I said, I'll post like, I'm going to help you lose weight. I'm going to help you get fit, but I'm going to help you get fit in all the other areas in your life as well.
Thank you again for your time, and I'm looking forward to more future conversations.
Cheers, brother. Thank you.